Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton hammering each other hard on the campaign trail as we await the start of a Trump rally in New Hampshire today. It is, of course, a battleground state where Clinton is pulling away in the polls. So we'll see if Donald Trump can catch her. Hello and welcome to Happening Now, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And I'm Greg Jarrett in for John Scott. Donald Trump accusing Clinton of selling access to her State Department through Clinton's charitable foundation. She says those charges are all smoke and mirrors and fire, and after more than a year of rousing his fans with tough talk on illegal immigration, Mr. Trump appears to be softening, that's his word, his position on the signature issue of his campaign, and he just sat down with some Republican leaders in New York City as they try to bring more minority voters into their tent.
Senior national correspondent John Roberts is live in New Hampshire, where the Trump rally gets underway in just a couple of hours. John?
Jenna, good morning to you. You know, the latest polls here in New Hampshire have got Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump by 9, but those latest polls are at least a couple of weeks old, and things are starting to tighten elsewhere. We'll get to those polls in just a couple of minutes. Donald Trump trying to keep the focus on Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, and those latest emails, but his original campaign game plan for this week, immigration, keeps on creeping into the mix. He mentioned this idea that Donald Trump is exploring a softening of his hardline position on what to do about the 11 million people in this country illegally. So hearing from some members of his own party about it. Take a look at the T-shirt that this one fellow had at his rally in Tampa yesterday, declaring that he doesn't believe there should be any amnesty for illegal immigrants. And last night in his town hall with Sean Hannity, Donald Trump explaining the background to his thinking about all of this and clearly not pleasing everyone in the crowd. Listen.
I've had very strong people come up to me, really great people come up to me, and they've said, Mr. Trump, I love you. But to take a person that's been here for 15 or 20 years and throw them and the family out, it's so tough, Mr. Trump. I mean, I have it all the time. It's a very, very hard thing.
Donald Trump also hearing from the other side today, though he's nowhere near Trump Tower, a small group of undocumented immigrants launching a protest at Trump Tower, at one point unfurling a banner saying that Donald Trump is a racist, and that was hung from the balcony of the second floor there at Trump Tower, right by the Starbucks. Some members of his own party, too, some conservatives, having heartburn about what they see as a shift in his position on immigration. Trump, though, managing to continue to hammer Hillary Clinton on the foundation and her emails. Listen to what he said in Jackson, Mississippi last night.
She wants to sell out American security to the Clinton Foundation for a big fat pile of cash. It's hard to tell where the Clinton Foundation ends and where the State Department begins.
So since Donald Trump has taken this pivot, by the way, it does seem that the polls are tightening. Take a look at the results of a couple of recent polls in North Carolina. CNN ORC poll has got Hillary Clinton just ahead by 1 now. A Monmouth poll taken from about the same time has got Hillary Clinton ahead by 2. But some very good news for Donald Trump in the state of Florida, where a new Florida Atlantic University poll shows him now ahead by 2. So his campaign, Jenna, very pleased so far with the early results of this pivot, which they continue to insist is not a pivot. Jenna?
John, I'm just curious, have you kept tally of how many Trump rallies you've attended over the last several weeks? I feel like every single day we're at a different Trump rally with John Roberts.
Yeah, well, we try to get to as many as we possibly can in as many different cities. The only down day he really has these days, Jenna, is on Sunday, and much of Sunday is taken up with policy meetings with his advisors. So he's pretty much got a rally every day, except tomorrow he will not have any. He's out fundraising in Utah. And, fundraising in Nevada, and then California he'll be fundraising on Monday. So it's likely that we may not see anything during the week in terms of rallies for the next few days.
Well, we're glad you're there because it tells a lot to find out what's going on the ground. And we're going to talk to Karl Rove about how effective these rallies really are when it comes to actual votes. So that'll be a question we'll ask him. John, great to see you as always. Thank you very much. Another busy day
Jenna.
On the Trump campaign trail. In the meantime, the Clinton campaign is coming under fire after new emails revealed that donors to the Clinton Foundation got a certain amount of access to the former Secretary of State. Donald Trump pounced. Hillary Clinton hit back.
She sold favors and access in exchange for cash. She sold it. She sold favors. She sold access. And wait till you see when it's revealed all of those people. Now it looks like it's 50% of the people that saw her had to make contributions to the Clinton Foundation.
Trump has said is ridiculous. My work as Secretary of State was not influenced by any outside forces. I made policy decisions based on what I thought was right to keep Americans safe and to protect U.S. interests abroad. No wild political attack by Donald Trump is going to change that. And, in fact, the State Department has said itself that there is no evidence of any kind of impropriety at all.
Remember, emails exposed these meetings. The Associated Press took a look at those, and that's how we got that story. In the meantime, the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks says he has even more documents about Clinton that he plans to release. Julian Assange telling Megyn Kelly last night they could impact the election.
We have received quite a lot of material, stimulated, of course, by the U.S. election process and by our major DNC revelation, which has now led to the resignation of 5 top officials in the DNC, including Debbie Wasserman Schultz. It's a complex business, what we do. We have to assess the veracity. We have a perfect 10-year record so far in never getting it wrong. We want to keep that reputation.
Chris Wallace is anchor of Fox News Sunday. So, few hints from Julian Assange, Chris. And as we look back over the last several months, there's been a few different stories about emails, a few different stories about the Clinton Foundation. What do you think is the impact of either the foundation story of this week or perhaps potential email leaks or document leaks from Julian Assange?
Well, let's first of all deal with Julian Assange. You call him the editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. This is a guy, he is speaking from the Ecuadorian embassy because he was to be extradited out of Britain on sexual assault charges and taken to Sweden. And he has sought asylum for 5 years in the Ecuadorian embassy. And the emails that he's trafficking in are stolen documents. They're ones that are hacked by the Russian government. They're ones that are stolen by Americans like Bradley Manning. So the idea that he would play a role in American politics is pretty distressing. This is a bad guy dealing and trafficking in stolen documents. Having said that, obviously, some of the documents turn out to be accurate, as we saw in the case of the Democratic National Committee. Depending on what he's able to reveal, it could be damaging to the Clinton campaign or not. I have to say, though, I find the whole idea that Julian Assange might play a role in American politics highly distasteful. So,
and you rightly point out, there are those that say he's a criminal by fact. There are those that call him a crusader. And so he's totally controversial, but by the books, Chris, it's a good important reminder for us about who this person is. In the meantime, though, he says these documents are coming. And if they do expose something about Hillary Clinton or they are the truth, then how should we all consider them?
Well, you have to consider the facts, even no matter how distasteful the source of the facts are. But remember, we're talking here, as in the case of the DNC, of the Russian government hacking into Democratic files and playing a role in our politics. I mean, regardless of whether it's to the benefit of Trump or the benefit of Clinton, that's a pretty dangerous idea that foreign governments that wish us ill would play a role in American politics. But obviously, if, and we have to repeat if, we don't know, one, whether he has any files, or 2, if he has files, what they're going to show, if they're accurate, and if they show something, obviously we have to deal with that on that basis. In terms of the, let me just say, in terms of the impact of what we have found out so far about Hillary Clinton, there obviously is a connection between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department. And when the Clinton campaign says, well, you know, the fact is they're cherry picking and there are just a few facts here, AP had to sue the government to get the files. I mean, if the Clinton campaign or the State Department or the Foundation wanted to make this information available, they could do it, and the Clinton and Associated Press wouldn't have to sue to get the files in the first place.
The Associated Press had a 3-year process to get these files and continues to look over the schedules and calendars, so we'll see what else they bring. What do you make of the Clinton reaction to the Associated Press, how hard they've gone after the Associated Press, and how they feel this may impact their road for the White House?
Well, obviously they're hurt by it. And the fact that Hillary Clinton, who was on this fundraising tour, has not been at rallies, has not been taking questions from reporters at press conferences or even individual questions by individual interviews. The fact that she felt the need to call in to Anderson Cooper last night to speak to this is an indication that they feel that it is having some impact and damaging her. Look, this scandal in terms of the private emails, in terms of the Clinton Foundation and its nexus to the Clinton State Department has been going on for more than a year now. There's a legitimate question how much impact it's going to have on the campaign. Obviously, if people are concerned, one would think they'd already be concerned if they were Clinton supporters. Maybe they aren't that concerned about it, but it's not good stuff to have coming out that 50% plus of the private, non-governmental, non-foreign people that she met with had some connection to the foundation. That's not a positive, and seems to indicate there is some connection between giving money to the foundation, not necessarily in getting government action. We haven't found that. But in terms of access, in terms of being able to meet or talk with the Secretary of State, and that's obviously something most people don't have the opportunity to do.
One of the other stories we reported to our viewers this week has been about the focus on the battleground states, states like Pennsylvania and Florida and Ohio. And Chris, when you're taking a look at this story to see whether it impacts, are you personally taking a look at these battleground states and seeing how it plays? Is that really where it matters, where whether or not this is a big deal could potentially impact the results?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are about 30 states that are either reliably red or reliably blue, and in effect have kind of been already allotted to one side or the other. So the key is, and there's a slightly greater number of swing states this time because, frankly, Donald Trump is having to defend some states that are usually reliably red, like Georgia, like Utah, like Arizona, and having to defend some states that usually are reliably Republican and that Clinton is competitive in. But sure, this race is going to be decided, as it always is, in about 10, 15, 20 states at the most. And when you see, as John Roberts just reported, maybe things tightening a little bit in Florida, within the margin of error in North Carolina, that indicates, and it's only been a week now that Trump has maintained this discipline, but it seems to be working to his advantage. And one of the questions that I'm sure a lot of Republicans are asking is, why didn't he start this sooner? Because it obviously is better for him to be targeting her and not targeting the Gold Star families or top Republican officials like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell.
It'll be interesting to see as some of the polls potentially move in the next week or so. That's what we'll be watching for the impact. Chris, thank you very much. I know you got a big show coming up. Chris is going to speak with Libertarian presidential nominee Gary Johnson. That will be on Fox News Sunday. Check your local listings for the time it will air in your area. We'll watch for that. Also, don't miss the Kelly File tonight, 9 p.m. for part 2 of Meghan's exclusive interview with WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. Tonight, he's answering more questions about that mysterious murder of a DNC staffer. Here's a sneak peek.
There was also speculation about whether your source was inside the DNC and whether it may have potentially been a man named Seth Rich who was killed. He was shot. Why are you so interested in Seth Rich's killer?
We're very interested in anything that might be a threat to alleged WikiLeaks sources.
I'm just asking you explicitly whether you believe somebody, connected with the DNC or somebody upset about the leak may have been behind it.
Well, for the answer, catch it, the Kelly File at 9 o'clock Eastern tonight. In the meantime, is Donald Trump trying to introduce a new revised policy on immigration reform? We'll take a closer look with Karl Rove in just a minute. And we want to hear from you on this. Donald Trump has been softening, again, that's his word, his stance on immigration recently. Does that concern you at all? Our live chat is up and running. Go to foxnews.com/happening now to join the conversation. In strong aftershocks hitting quake-ravaged Italy, just as rescue crews race against time, hoping to find more survivors of that deadly earthquake that leveled 3 towns and killed nearly 250 people. But firefighters did manage to pull out a 10-year-old little girl alive, almost a home off of her. Amy Kellogg live in Amatrice, Italy. And, Amy, I understand just a couple of hours ago, yet another aftershock.
Yes, there have been lots of aftershocks, Greg, over 400, but this one was really, really strong. It unnerved people in a way that others haven't, and in fact, it has caused the rescue and recovery work just down the street really here, which is where the main destruction in the town is. That's the historic center that has pretty much been completely decimated, and it's very densely packed, and the streets are full of rubble. So the work there had to stop after that big aftershock, which was at 4.3 on the Richter scale, because it was just too dangerous for workers to continue their jobs. Of course, that was very discouraging news. The death toll still stands at 241 people. It had been slightly higher this morning, and somehow it was scaled down from 247 to 241. We know that now 215 lives have been saved since the earthquake happened. More than 200 people remain injured, and thousands of people are homeless. It's very, very hot here in the day, which is hard for the rescue effort, but it's very cold at night, which makes it uncomfortable. Particularly on their hours, they really do taper off of finding people in rubble alive. It's been more than 36 hours now, but rescue crews are clinging to hope. Of course, they want to believe that they may still be able to save lives, and during that earthquake in Aquila in 2009, one person survive for 60 hours. So, of course, we do hear miracle stories, and people here are hoping for more. When I asked the mayor of Amatrice, where I'm standing now, what more he needs, what sort of obstacles stand in the way of the workers here getting their task done, he said, enough has been done. What more can be done? People's homes are destroyed. People have been killed. Really, at this point, what more is there to do? He also added that he was always very skeptical of the European Union, but he said the response from the EU in this case has been remarkable, and he has kind of changed his perspective on that. Now, the Hotel Roma, which was here in Amatrice, it's been destroyed. There were huge fears that that might have been more packed with tourists than it was. Turns out there were indeed casualties, but it was thought that there could have been dozens more. So that is one bit of relief for people racing against time now to try to get everyone out they can. Otherwise, much has been made about the beauty of this small city, Amatrice. I had never, Greg, been to this part of Italy, and I have been absolutely marveling at the beauty. The landscape and the color is much different to other parts of Italy we know better, possibly Tuscany, Rome, of course. And it's just sad to think that people will never see this town again with all of its historic buildings. Finally, there was supposed to be an important food festival here this weekend, and some people say, you know, we don't know who may have invited friends to come stay around here for that festival, which of course now will not happen. So that's another factor in terms of not being absolutely certain exactly how many people rescuers are looking for. And finally, Greg, on Juliana, that little 10-year-old girl you showed the video of. She was rescued after 18 hours. She underwent surgery last night. She's said to be doing fine. Sadly, her sister did not make it, but on the positive side, her parents are alive. So at least the three of them now have each other. They will be mourning the loss of the sister, but it was an incredible tale of survival, and she, who we saw in the pictures, is doing okay right now. Yeah, Greg.
That's good news indeed. Let's hope there are others that can be still rescued at this late hour. Amy Kellogg. Amy, thanks.
Back here at home, Donald Trump just wrapping up a leadership roundtable he held in New York City. We're looking forward to a rally that he has in New Hampshire to watch for any news there. He's been speaking a lot about immigration. How does that play with the electorate? We're going to talk to Karl Rove about that, as well as how effective these rallies really are with bringing voters out. All that after the break.
On illegal immigration. Don't let the media fool the media. Very strong on illegal immigration. We have to be. We have no choice. We either have a country or we don't. We either have borders or we don't. The wall is very important. But so I'll be making a speech on that, I would say, over the next week, laying out an exact plan, and I think people will have great respect for the plan.
That was Donald Trump moments ago speaking at a Republican roundtable in New York City. But just last night on the issue of immigration, Trump said this to Sean Hannity.
So you have somebody that's been in the country for 20 years, has done a great job, has a job and everything else. Okay, do we take him and the family, her or him or whatever, and send them out? And they're gone? Or when somebody really has shown, it's called like the merit system, other than they did break the law in the first place, okay? And that's a little unfair to people, but we're going to let people come in anyway. They'll come in legally. We're going to let people come in anyway. It's not going to have an impact. So do we tell these people to get out, number one, or do we work with them and let them stay in some form?
Karl Rove is a former senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to President George W. Bush, also a Fox News contributor. So, a point taken, don't let the media fool you, Karl. Never a good idea. But on these issues of immigration, you saw just these two comments from Donald Trump, and this is the reason why people are raising questions about where he stands now on immigration. How do you see it?
Well, they seem on the surface of it to be a contradiction. The meeting this morning sounds like the Donald Trump we've heard for a long time. The second Donald Trump seems new, but I would remind you that even during the primaries, he initially said we're going to build a wall and deport everybody, and then he said we're going to build a beautiful door in that beautiful wall and let them come back in. So there's been this tension all along. I would say this: I think this is going to cause him problems among some of his hardcore supporters, but probably less than you might anticipate if he does say there ought to be a path to legalization, to legal status. Yeah, and here's why. First of all, who thinks Donald Trump is weak on immigration? I mean, here's the guy who wants to have extreme vetting and build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. And also, I'd make this point. Take a look at the polls, the Fox exit polls in the battleground states, the Republican primaries. We ask in the Fox exit poll, do you think there ought to be a path to legal status, or do you think we ought to deport them all? And look at all of these battleground states. In every one of the states, the Republican primary voters were in favor of some path to legal status, a position that Jeb Bush had. Florida, 54-37. North Carolina, 54-39. New Hampshire, 56-41. Ohio, 57-39. So my point is that even among the hardcore of the hardcore, the people who turned out and voted in primaries, he wins the primary by a good margin, and a lot of his people are saying, let him have a path to legal citizenship. So they're being drawn to him because of the other toughness of his status. In political science, we call it a heuristic, a shortcut to understand something, and they think he's hard on immigration, and they're willing to tolerate this.
It's a new word for us, a new term. Educating us with the numbers as well, Karl. It's interesting to see those numbers in those battleground states, but it brings up another interesting question about, strategically speaking, and this is in your wheelhouse. How big of an issue is immigration overall in those key battleground states that Donald Trump has to win? Is it the top issue, or is it really about jobs?
Well, it's an issue in two respects. It is an issue of particular importance to the Latino population. Mitt Romney won 27% of the Latino vote after saying self-deportation and lost the election. George W. Bush had developed strong links with the Latino community, won 44% of them in 2004, and won re-election. You got to get better than 27. Right now, Trump in the national polls is around 23% among Latinos. That would point to a very big difficulty in the general election. So it will have an impact on them. But it has a secondary impact, which is there are a lot of people who want to vote for a Republican who are not Latino, who live in the suburbs, who are, sort of not really linked to the Republican Party but want change, but they want a president that they feel that is going to do a good job. And the idea of deporting, rounding up 11 or 12 million people, many of whom have been here in our society for decades, most of whom are working and keeping their nose clean, some of whom have not and deserve to be rounded up and thrown in a jail, but most of whom have been productive contributors to America, unsettles a lot of American voters. So he's appealing to people who live in the suburbs around Philadelphia or the suburbs of Cleveland or live in Tampa, St. Pete, and whose neighbor is an Hispanic. This is an appeal that goes beyond just Latino.
So let's talk strategy then. I'm curious in getting that message out, whatever your message is eventually, if you're the Trump campaign on immigration. We see him holding the rallies. There's a big question about whether he'll have a policy speech about immigration. He says he will, but it's been scheduled and then it's been moved. Just strategically speaking, what is the best strategy for Donald Trump? Is it these big rallies? Is it standing on a street corner, going on walks through neighborhoods, doing policy speeches? How would you advise him?
Well, the answer to your question is yes, all of those. But I think one of the key things is where is he doing all of those things? Where is he walking the streets? Where is he having the roundtables? Where is he visiting businesses? Where is he having the rallies? Think about the last couple of days. Today he's going to be in New Hampshire, but yesterday he was in Mississippi last night. He was in Austin, Texas, where I'm coming to you from. If we have to worry about Texas and Mississippi 75 days before the election, the Republicans are in deep trouble. He needs to be spending his time in the states where he needs to play defense, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and the states where he has to be on offense, Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, maybe Michigan, Iowa, maybe Nevada, maybe Colorado, New Hampshire, someplace else. He needs to be spending his time there. The only reason to come to a place like Texas is to take a money sack and drag it through Houston and Dallas and Fort Worth and San Antonio. Coming to Austin, Texas, which is a little blue marble in the middle of a red state, I'm not certain was particularly useful, nor going to Jackson, Mississippi.
He did do some fundraising in Texas between events. So point well taken, and we'll continue to watch the strategy moving forward. Carl, great to see you as always. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Speaking of the presidential election, it is really getting ugly out there. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton going after one another. Will it work for either of them? Fox Extreme Weather Alert now on a string of powerful tornadoes that swept across the Midwest, with the destruction stretching from Ohio to Indiana. GOP presidential Governor Mike Pence left the campaign trail to assess the damage in his state. Mike Tobin is following the story from our Midwest Bureau in Chicago. Mike?
And good morning, Greg. Hundreds of Hoosiers are picking up the pieces. Thousands are hoping their power is restored soon. And even more are glad that the injuries were not more severe. The worst of the tornadoes has now been identified as an EF3, with winds as strong as 165 miles per hour. That hit Kokomo, Indiana, about 60 miles north of Indianapolis. Dramatic video of the winds destroying a Starbucks there. Remarkably, no major injuries from that incident. Indiana Governor and GOP Vice Presidential hopeful Mike Pence left the campaign trail as news of the tornadoes reached him. So far, he's prioritizing tornado assessment and recovery. No word on when he plans to return to the stump.
We're going to be here so long as it takes to make sure that all the resources in the various agencies of the state of Indiana that can support recovery efforts for the families and the communities takes place.
And remarkable video of the funnel clouds as they formed up. 35 tornadoes were reported across Indiana and parts of Ohio. At least a dozen of them are confirmed. Dramatic and widespread as the tornadoes were, no life-threatening injuries. It seems the worst of the injuries was a little boy who got a deep cut, apparently from flying debris. Now, the mayor of Kokomo says in that town alone, 220 people went to the shelter. 32,000 people lost power. Howard and Montgomery counties got it the worst. Neighboring municipalities are reaching out with resources and manpower. The bad news is conditions are right for more storms today. Greg?
Mike Tobin live in Chicago. Mike, thanks.
You got it.
And now to another big story. Florida Governor Rick Scott expressing frustration with Washington's response in battling the Zika virus. The governor telling us yesterday on Happening Now he hasn't yet received the materials and support he requested.
The federal government's not been a partner. I've got requests into the CDC. We need more Zika antibody test kits. The federal government, the CDC, is the only one that can provide those. They've only given us a portion of our last one.
Well, after that interview, we reached out to the CDC to find out what exactly was going on. The CDC responding, saying they have and will continue to provide support to Florida to address the outbreak. In a statement to Happening Now, the CDC says after learning this week that Florida needed more materials, the CDC is sending another shipment expected to arrive on Thursday, August 25th. This gives Florida the ability to conduct 6,300 Zika antibody tests. That's what the governor was concerned about. Florida health officials reported a second non-travel related case of the virus in Palm Beach County this week, bringing the state's total number to 43. Greg?
Well, a war of words on the campaign trail as Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both now focus on one another. Which candidate do these kinds of attacks serve better? In a moment. America's election headquarters is certainly heating up with Donald Trump going after Hillary Clinton on the email and Clinton Foundation controversies, while she takes on Trump over his evolving immigration policy.
She really got the emails wrong, that I can tell you.
And now Hillary wants to surrender America to globalism, just what we don't want. She wants a country without borders. She wants trade deals written for the benefit of foreign corporations. She wants a government that ignores the will of the people. She wants to sell out American security to the Clinton Foundation for a big fat pile of cash.
My understanding is that the comment you just referred to was the third different position he took yesterday on immigration. Somebody has told him, I guess the latest people that he's consulting, how damaging his statements have been, how terrible his deportation plan is, how offensive his views on immigrants have been from the very first day of his campaign.
Well, that was the civilized stuff. It got worse. Joining us now, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio host, David Webb, radio host of The David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot. Both are Fox News contributors. Good to see you both.
Good to
Leslie,
see you.
Trump goes on to call her a bigot. She says, no, you're peddling bigotry and a hate movement. Has this now really devolved into an ugly campaign in which both sides are hurling racist epithets?
Yes, and unfortunately, I think it works better for Donald Trump to do it with his supporters, at least the beginning core supporters, as we saw in the primary. But I would encourage...
But they already love him, so...
Exactly, but I think, you see, he gets bumps from that community when he does these types of attacks. However, with Hillary Clinton's core supporters, such as myself, that doesn't go over well, and if I were to advise her, I would say that she needs to take the high road. You can remind people of the rhetoric without doing the... oh, yeah, you said this, I'm going to say this and hurl an insult back. She can't do that.
You know, David, Trump has now offered his view of what it's like to be black in America, as if he would know, but he said food stamps, violence, poverty, bad schools, no jobs, failure, dysfunction. He went on to say, you know, your life is so absolutely miserable. What the hell do you have to lose? Vote for me. Is that any way to ask for African American
Actually,
votes?
in a way it is. And to do that, you have to do, as I've done for decades now, and go in and talk to blacks in different and disparate neighborhoods. Blunt talk is what's needed here. There is a bigotry that exists. It's the bigotry and the soft bigotry of no expectations and low and bad outcomes when it comes. No, but when it comes to the Democrat policies and liberal progressive policies. Look at Detroit. Look at Newark, New Jersey. Look at the Fifth Ward in Houston. Go to East LA. What he's talking about is
that African Americans, some were offended by
some. You know what? Somebody's always going to be offended, but is the truth the same? Look at the economic outcomes. Look at where black unemployment among young blacks, millennials, and youth. And by the way, that's how you start to get ahead in life. Look at the Hillary Clinton position on education, which is what saves people in bad situations.
Leslie, Trump has not campaigned in black communities.
Correct.
He doesn't go to speak in front of black churches or black colleges. He rejected an invitation to speak before the NAACP. You know, today he meets with a handful of African Americans and Hispanics. Is it any wonder that he's polling at an abysmal 1% among African Americans, and will that now change?
No, it's not going to change. And you don't need to just speak to that audience for it to change. He doesn't speak to African Americans. He does not speak to Latinos. He does not speak to women. He speaks to his core audience, which are a bunch of white guys. And the reality is, to your point, David, when you talk about what does Hillary provide for education, well, it's not slashing. And when you look at his track record as a businessman, and you do have products made in countries like Bangladesh, Mexico, even China, that contributed to that high unemployment in the African American community.
Hold on a second. These are a bunch of talking points that don't actually work. One, if you want to play the who's made what where, then you can look at her clothing. That's a silly argument. Let's get to the real issues here. Look at the communities that are economically disparate, black or otherwise. Look at the policies in those communities. And Hillary Clinton doesn't speak to blacks. The Democrats use blacks. Blacks have surrendered their political capital.
So you agree that she's a bigot? That's what Trump said.
It's a soft bigotry of no expectations. I don't care about calling her a bigot. I'm not calling her a bigot.
Let me switch subjects.
The bad outcomes matter here. Tell me one one community led by liberal progressive policies. Look at Baltimore. Look at the failures, and tell me those were Democrat, that was Republican administrations.
Controversies and scandals are almost synonymous with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, you know, from Whitewater and Travelgate, and the list goes on and on, to most recently her emails and now the foundation, which prompted Trump to say, quote, she sold favors and access in exchange for cash. He said that yesterday. Is that going to have any impact on voters who may already have a very firm opinion about Hillary Clinton's honesty or lack thereof? 2/3 of Americans say she's dishonest, but that may be baked in already, right?
Absolutely. Look, if I were Donald Trump, you know, hitting home that message again and again is just really preaching to the choir. If you look at polls, the people that like her and the people that don't really care about the emails, and it's not just Senator Sanders. In addition to that, there is right now no evidence there was anything criminal here. There is no evidence that a meeting led to a favor. And some of those meetings, we have to remember, there were over 2,000 meetings, and you're talking about 80-some meetings that were donors to the Clinton Foundation. And by the way, Donald Trump also donated to that foundation, and I'm sure if he had picked up the phone, he would have got a meeting.
Yes, some $250,000. Right. David, one more subject. Let me squeeze it in. Trump's flip-flop, allegedly, on immigration. On Monday, he said, I'll do the same thing that President Obama has done. He let most of them stay. On Tuesday, Trump said he's opening to softening the laws. That was his word, softening. Last night, he says, hey, if they're upstanding, we'll work with him. I mean, come on. He has clearly reversed himself, and by doing so, does he damage himself with supporters who were trusting him?
You know, much to the point that Leslie just made, the people that support Trump are going to vote for him in large numbers. On the immigration issue, and he does need to clarify this, lawful presence is the key word here. You're an attorney. You understand that. We have existing laws that need to be enforced, and that is something Obama has not done, and Hillary certainly wouldn't do. Why didn't he figure that out in
November when he started saying we're going to deport everybody?
I wish I had the answer for you, but I'll tell you what he needs to do right now.
Because he didn't pay attention. He didn't bother to study what the law is.
Right, and he needs to take it to that point. We have existing laws that need to be enforced. Lawful presence is the issue that we have to deal with. There should be no amnesty, as Hillary's promoting or Obama would like to do. So we can't, by the way, import poverty, which affects those black and disparate economic communities even more, which is what happens when you bring in an uneducated mass of people who take jobs at that level. It just doesn't work.
David and Leslie, thank you for being with us.
Good to see you.
We tackled 4 different subjects, and I appreciate it.
We solved all the problems right here.
Well, not all of them. There are so many. Jenna, thank you.
A deadly siege at the American University in Kabul, killing more than a dozen people. Officials investigating who was behind the attack. What we now know. Next.
Welcome back. Let's check what's ahead on Outnumbered at the top of the hour. Sandra and Harris, what's coming up?
Let's do it. Thank you. Hillary Clinton is expected to hit Donald Trump hard on race today as he ramps up his outreach to minorities and calls her a bigot. Can he win over blacks and Hispanics this late in the game?
Plus, more mainstream media bias. The major paper that failed to print the explosive AP report on Hillary's meetings with donors while she was leading up this State Department.
Oopsie, they just missed that one somehow. And Iran is at it again. Another close encounter in international waters. Who's making them feel like they can get away with this?
Former U.S. ambassador is the guy to have on the couch
He's
today.
Right over there in the
John
studio.
Bolton is here to weigh in, and he will be outnumbered, as we will remind him at the top of the hour.
Yeah, he's doing some kind of workout over there, I guess. No, not really.
Workout?
Back to you now.
That's not in my vocabulary.
Oh.
All right. Thanks,
See
you
ya.
guys.
Thanks,
See you
Greg.
later.
Well, no claims of responsibility as of yet for the deadly attack on the American University of Afghanistan. At least 13 people killed, dozens more injured after gunmen opened fire on the heavily fortified university in Kabul. The 9-hour siege began with a suicide car bombing at the entrance, and officials say 2 gunmen involved were also killed. Connor Powell is in Jerusalem with the latest. Connor?
Yeah, Jenna, more than 700 Afghan students were trapped inside the American University of Afghanistan for about 9 hours or so when these three attackers stormed the university grounds. It took place about 7 o'clock at night last night. This was a very busy time. A lot of students coming off their day jobs, going to night classes. There are other students just there to study, to catch up on work. It's a place that is well known for young Afghans, both men and women, to socialize in safety. It has also always been a target of the Taliban, who resent its sort of Western appearance and its connections to the United States. It is a U.S. government funded and supported university. It is Afghanistan's most famous university and by far their best university there. Now, at least 13 people were killed, including 7 students. One professor was killed as well. He had been a fellow and studied at Stanford University. He was teaching law there. According to Afghan officials, they are still trying to figure out who actually claimed responsibility for this. That is the one big question right now, whether it's the Taliban or some other IS-related group.
More on this as we get it. Connor, thank you.
Much more in the next hour of Happening Now. Tensions mounting along the border between Syria and Turkey, why the United States is threatening to pull support from Syrian Kurdish forces there. Plus, a rare find at the bottom of the Great Lakes. Look at that, the wreck of a ship unseen since Thomas Jefferson was president. We're going to be talking to the man who found it on what it means for the study of American history. Stick around for that.
Lochte may be a contestant on Dancing with the Stars next season. ESPN reports that ABC approached Lochte before the games, and negotiations continued even after Lochte's disaster at that Rio gas station. The interview reportedly went so well that Lochte is a shoo-in. Neither ABC or Lochte has commented on the rumor, but we'll find out next week who's in, who's out.
Now another reason not to watch.
Oh, come on. It's a good show.
Somebody dropped him on his head
Samba?
when he was a
I don't
child.
know.
We'll see you
That
back
is so
here in an hour.
harsh.
Outnumbered begins right now.
There goes our exclusive with Lochte.